Welcome to Keep the Line Moving, the podcast where leadership meets life and inspiration. Here we spotlight extraordinary leaders. We're diving deep into how they inspire, motivate, and lead with strategy and empathy to achieve the extraordinary. Here we go. Episode 133 of the podcast, and we're talking about overcoming adversity with courage and perseverance and resilience. Our guest, Sean Lee, will explain how he overcame imposter syndrome and massive injury as a result of getting hit by a truck. He will explain. Sean Lee is the CEO of OpenDrives. He's been in that position for about 9 or 10 months, and he has never asked for or applied for a job at the company, and he has been there for 10 years. Sean and I go into detail on why he gets these jobs and promotions. OpenDrives, I will explain it through the way Sean puts it. With his mission, and it's clear, along with OpenDrives, is to solve data and media workflow challenges with simple, high-performing, and flexible solutions, always putting the customer first. Now, we will talk about his role at OpenDrives, but this podcast dives deep into leadership principles. Again, overcoming adversity by getting to know yourself. And that allows you to overcome adversity and to be a better leader. This is a wonderful conversation about a guest who is really in touch with his leadership, how he affects the people he leads, and his overall mission and values in being a great CEO and person. The conversation begins now with Sean Lee, the CEO of OpenDrives. All right, everybody, look who it is, Sean Lee. Sean Lee and I met a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas, Nevada at the SVG Chairman's Forum. Sean, tell us give me the elevator pitch for OpenDrive.
OpenDrives delivers everything from, sometimes it's called glass to screen. Everywhere that data needs to move through that pipeline of, camera acquisition to ingest to editorial, post, color and finishing to, CDN origin source. OpenDrives plays a complete data management pipeline from end to end. What we've done is we've built a framework so that we can work not only with our customers very well, but our technology and alliance partners very well. So companies like Adobe and Blackmagic and Iconic and other software providers that provide tools within this industry, we basically allow them to access that data faster and more seamlessly than other providers.
Sean, you and I met and we talked about leadership a lot, and it was a natural progression in getting to know somebody. Not everybody enjoys talking about leadership, but you and I do. How would you describe yourself as a leader, Sean?
That's a great question. And as CEO of OpenDrives, I have to say, it's not just about the letters that, are encompassing my name there with CEO. That leadership comes through just a genuine desire to want to lead people, want to stand up and make decisions. And so the person that I am, at OpenDrives or at my home as a father or to my friends as I organize events, and actually I'm a city councilman too. It all, breathed the through line of wanting to help people. So me as a leader really stems around people, the people focus. And really when you can help others succeed, uplift them, listen to them and understand who it is that they truly are and what is it they want and guide them, through a process of whatever they're encountering. That's how I would say that I lead, very strong servant leadership type of approach.
You know what's really interesting, Sean? And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. And we're 2.5 years almost into this podcast. And I have a lot of people that gravitate towards your messaging there. And you just said it beautifully. I agree with you. And then there are other folks that probably don't listen to this podcast because they don't want to hear it. I'm not judging them. They just want to get the work done. How do you think about those people?
Yeah, so I truly believe that there's not one way to do something, and we have to be very, very careful when we judge and we say, oh, this is the right way and that is the wrong way. Because remember, like good and bad, right and wrong, those are all human constructed values. They're really just change states. There's this way and then there's that way. One's not better for the other, and every situation and every person requires something that's unique. So whenever I find people that maybe I come in conflict with, right, where there's a disagreement of opinion or perspective or path forward, you always have to approach conflict with curiosity. Why? And you should always start with, why do I feel this way? Not why are you doing this thing? Why do you believe that? You have to start with yourself. Because frankly, we can't control anybody, right? We can only
Yep.
control ourselves. Hopefully, we can control ourselves. Um, but it really starts with ourselves to be curious and say, oh, why do I feel this way? What prejudices do I have? What preconceived notions, what opinions do I feel strongly about? Because as you receive new information, new data points, it should do one of two things. It should either make you feel more strongly about what you believe, or it should make you question what you believe. And I love when I get new data points that question what I believe. Like I find it just magical. Like it's like discovering a new trail on the the hike that you've always done. You're like, whoa, I didn't see that, and I've walked by here 100 times. Because through that lens, we get to grow and expand. We get to be more than that very narrow, like, oh, I only believe this thing. And that openness, I think, helps us all grow and be able to collaborate.
So today, in preparation for this podcast, I remember, when we first started doing the podcast, I used to be challenged by this gentleman, Paul Salazar, who was our first producer of the podcast. Savin Narwell does it now. She's amazing. Paul was amazing. He was our first producer. And he used to say to me, he gave me great advice. He used to say, tell the audience why you have the guest on, what value they will bring. And you're going to uncover it through this conversation. So to that point about you, I was thinking about you today, and I said to myself, I said, hey, Chris, I said, you could go in so many different directions with Sean because of the way you think, how you just answered that question. So there are people in the tech space, in the media and entertainment space, where you and I both come from, where you're in now, and I still have my hand in it periodically, that are going to say, I want to hear about OpenDrives. I want to hear about his role there. We'll get to that, everybody. But because Sean is such a big thinker, I want to take him in different directions while we drill down on his core values and what he does at OpenDrives. So let's start with you. And how do you tell your story to people? How did you get to become the CEO of OpenDrives? And then it's like a flower. Then we'll branch out and see all the different blooms, my friend.
Yeah. So I have told this story many times, and I typically start with the 10 years that I've been at OpenDrives. So I joined the company in 2015 as employee number 7. And through my tenure here, I've been VP of engineering, um, CTO, then CPO, head of product. I started our product team, and then COO, and then now CEO for the past 9 months or so. And in between those stints, I was a sales engineer and a support technician. I've done professional services all within OpenDrives. And I frame it this way to start because all the roles it is that I've had within OpenDrives, I've never chased. All the roles have all been offered to me either by other leaders in the company or by the board, or by our investors to say, hey, Sean, like we think that you would be great in this role. And I will tell you that the last 2 roles, I've declined those roles multiple times because I didn't think that I was ready. I didn't think that I could provide value to the business in the way that I saw that it needed it. And I think that that strong focus around the value it is that you bring to an organization in a authentic, vulnerable way, not in a self-protected, like, hey, I'm the CTO, protect my ego, what happens if I'm not in this role, I'm going to make less money, like whatever that is, that selfishness of that position, um, in my opinion and my philosophy, is in conflict with succeeding as a leader. I happen to function in this company as CEO. And in the hierarchy of things in traditional business, you say, oh, you sit at the top, and then you've got a bunch of other people that report to you underneath you. I don't believe that to be the case. A level one tech versus me, we bring value to the business, and the business can't exist in the absence of either one of us. We just perform different functions within the organization. And I would argue that the triangle should be inverted, that the top leaders within the business should be at the bottom in support of the people, and then the customers being at the top. And we as leadership, it's our responsibility to be able to support our organization to provide the best version of what this company is and the best version of the individuals to service those people. And then going back just a little bit further into my history, I've spent my entire career within media and entertainment technology. So I spent 16 years at NBC Universal, where really I just had a job. Truth be told, for a long time, I had a lot of imposter syndrome because I didn't have a college degree. And I spent 16 years at Universal thinking that, I was just going to, be a desktop support tech or, an IT sysadmin like for the rest of my life because my dad passed when I was 18 and, putting food on the table for my family was more important than anything else. But yeah, so that's a bit of my background. That's my journey into being where it is that I am today. And I don't know where I'll be tomorrow, but I'm having fun where I'm at now.
So you mentioned the word curiosity. And then you didn't say this word or this concept together, but this is what I'm observing in you. You couple a curiosity, a curious nature, with an acute self-awareness. What you're saying to us here is you've overcome a lot. You've overcome that imposter syndrome by being curious. Is that safe to say, Sean? And look where you are. You're the CEO of OpenDrives.
Yeah, and
Do you agree with that?
I 100% agree, and I am grateful every day for where it is that I am. There are a few things that I would say helped me along the way. One is there were a few people, the founder of OpenDrives, there was my COO at Illumination, and a few other people that believed in me. And I realized this idea. Believe in the people that believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. I was like, this person, like my COO at Illumination, she's a Harvard MBA. She was an executive at Universal. She was now at Illumination, and her co-COO was from Sony Pictures. And these people offered me this role to be director of IT for Illumination. I was like flattered. I thought that they had got the wrong guy. And I was like, I don't necessarily believe in myself in this moment, but these really, really smart people that I highly respect believe in me. So I'm going to go with that. And that has really served me like throughout my career in maybe quieting that voice, that imposter syndrome. And I will also give a tip to Simon Sinek. He has this great talk where he talks about imposter syndrome. He says imposter syndrome implies that you are trying to be someone else. So if you're trying to be Jeff Bezos or Tim Cook as a CEO, you will absolutely be an imposter. But if you try to be the best version of Sean Lee, the CEO of OpenDrives, it's actually impossible for you to be an imposter because you are that person.
Are you somebody, Sean? Let's dive into that. Are you somebody that's always been confident in who you are? I know you said you had that imposter syndrome, but listen, you got a job at 19 at NBC Universal. It was Universal back then only, but you got a job at 19 to support your family. That took some chutzpah. That took some gumption. How did you do that? And how did you get the wherewithal to be successful that early?
Back then, it was luck. At least that's how I perceive it. And we've all probably heard that. What is luck? Luck is preparation meets timing and opportunity, right? But I'm a very, very different person. At least I see myself as being a very different person today than I was back then. But when I talk to my friends and family about, how I feel like I'm a totally different person, they're like, no, you've been the same person the whole time. I feel very different. There was a mass amount of insecurity when I was younger. There was a lot of not knowing who I was, and there was a lot of time spent understanding and learning who I was. That was really key for me, I think, in my development, and I do some mentorship too. And in my mentorship practices, I really strive to help people understand who it is that they are, to become intimate and vulnerable with themselves. And oddly, it's the most difficult thing to do. You think it's difficult to be intimate and vulnerable with somebody else? Try to be it with yourself and to admit what you are not good at, what you're bad at, what you could be doing better. But also at the same time, for some people, that comes a little bit more naturally to be like, oh, I suck at these things, because we're also self-deprecating in that manner sometimes. But then also to have gratitude and appreciation for the things it is that you succeed at. I'm awesome at this thing. I'm really good at this, and feel pride in who it is that you are. Because you know what? You'll only receive what you feel like you deserve. So if you're not feeling good about yourself and the value it is that you're providing to your family, your friends, the community, you won't get anything. You won't get that coming back to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all starts with getting to know who you were, and I spent a lot of time figuring that out.
I got a quote here from you. Are you ready? I
Yep.
want you to respond to it. Technology will always have challenges and failures, but it's how the team behind these technologies responds in the face of those challenges that truly matters.
Yeah. So people are actually the hardest part of any process. Okay. The technology, given enough kind of resources and time, you'll solve the problem. You'll figure out what the go-to-market motion is. You'll figure out what the product is. You'll figure out all these things that are just process oriented. And process is easy because process doesn't have an opinion. It just is. The process doesn't come back to you and say, hey, I don't think that that's a good idea.
Process doesn't have a bad day, right?
Yeah,
Go
process
ahead.
doesn't
Yeah,
have a bad day. It just
right,
it works or it doesn't work, and that's it. And then you
right.
go and you fix it. But people are different. People's perspectives are unique. And so you always have to start with the people. So build relationships first. Then you can work together, because now you're intimate. Now you're vulnerable. Now you know each other. And then it's not about just the function. And then through that, you can empathize. So we've had some, I'm not proud of, like some technology failures with customers. And each and every time those customers came back to us and said, hey, that was horrible. We never want that to happen ever again. But man, I've never seen a company and its people respond to the failure the way that OpenDrives did. You guys took ownership, you were transparent, you were vulnerable, and like you say, hey, we failed. We messed that up. And this is what we're going to do to fix it. And I think that that's what's really, really important. And what they then said was, because of how you responded, we want to buy more. You've got a customer for life now. So the thing that really sets companies apart, I believe, are its people and the culture of that company and how it is that it engages, with others.
Okay, so you have these gigantic tech conferences, and they talk about their product, they talk about their sales, and they talk about their ROI. And they leave no room to talk about what is on everyone's mind. Meaning, what you just said, this quote that we just talked about, technology will always have challenges and failures, but it's how the team behind these technologies responds in the face of those challenges that truly matter. And that's what people, CEOs, CTOs, they all think about. How do I get these people to deal with this technology? It's 80% on their mind, 75% on their mind. It dominates their thought process. Yet at these conferences, we spend zero time talking about it. What is your opinion on this?
Um, you and I are on the same page. I actually just came back from NAB, and we did. I sat on a panel that was OpenDrives, Keycode Media, who was the reseller and integrator for our product, and the customer, which is Goldcrest Media in New York. Um, and it was around finding the right technology fit, the right technology solution fit that meets your budget. Like, how do you do that? And you know what we spent most of our time talking about? Trust and relationships. The
There you
entire
go.
panel was we spent the entire time talking about that because you have to have trust to start, and you can only build trust through having a personal relationship with people. But it really stemmed like the entire panel was really talking about how you build that. That you're not interacting as like a business to a business. You're interacting as a person to a person with businesses behind it.
Exactly. Let me tell you a story. When I first got into the NFL, so this is in the early 2000s, and I was overseeing the content department of the then Oakland Raiders. We used to have these summits where everybody that had my job at the NFL, we would meet at a locale for a couple of days, and we would talk about in stadium presentation, we would talk about content development, we would talk about equipment to some degree, and but mostly it was bonding, and it was hours on end. I remember these conversations. I remember where people were sitting. It was the bonding about leadership and how do you deal with budgets relative to bringing on interns or relative to communicating with senior leaders. What are the tactics? How do we present things? But how do we garner trust? How do we collaborate? How do we care about our people? Those conversations, I remember, this is over 20 years ago. And I remember there was one or two people that would always want to bring it back to the business, right? The perceived business, which was the tech and everything. We had already talked about that. We had already given time and chunks of hours on that. Now it was time to talk about the people and unifying the people. And I remember thinking, why do they keep bringing that up? And I would say we've already talked about that, but their brain and their mind didn't think in that way. Some people just think differently, Sean. They just think differently. Fair?
And it's needed.
Yes, it is.
As a business leader, whenever we are looking to fill a role, what I think about is where the gap lies. You know, we recently hired a person, and in at the end of the interview, I said, "I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think you're fantastic. If you do not get hired, it's because you're too much like me. Because you don't want a bunch of people within your business, in your organization, that all think like you. There needs to be like a common thread, like a common through line where you can like stand on the same kind of level, but you want them to be different because what that difference brings is expansion, right? Is that, oh, we can learn. And having all of your kind of personality profile types be one thing is actually really bad. Like, can't be that way.
The way you talk about life and leadership, you can sense a wonderful sense of appreciation from you. My question to you is, I do know something about you that you could share with folks. Some people say, and I don't mean to be flippant about this, but some people say, oh, I feel like I've been hit by a truck today. You have literally been hit by a truck. Can you tell that story, please, and how that has framed the way you are as a leader, husband, father, and person, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, March 8th, 2020, I was on a bike ride in Los Angeles called the Crush the Marathon Ride. So it's a ride where 1,000 to 2,000 riders show up on the LA Marathon route while it's closed early in the morning. And my buddy and I tried to figure out what we were going to do to get there. And we decide, hey, the start location's 12 miles from where it is that we live, and the finish is kind of near our house. So let's just ride there. And we were very careful. Rode down small streets, looked both ways for every intersection, and 4 blocks from the start location, I get hit by a 2020 Tacoma doing 50 miles an hour, kind of from behind on the left. I don't remember any of this. I had a concussion. My pelvis was fractured in 4 places. Grade 2 lacerated liver and dislocated thumb. All I remember was riding and then being on the sidewalk and getting loaded into the ambulance, and then flashes of being in the hospital in the ER where I crashed, and then the ICU for a couple of days where I was then stabilized, and then had pelvic reconstruction surgery about a week later. And so this story is important for a couple of reasons. One is my dad passed when I was 18. And this was another reminder of how tomorrow is not guaranteed and how time is the irrenewable resource. We're not guaranteed the next minute, the next hour, the next day, the next week of our lives. We could be gone like that. And so at any moment in time, we have an opportunity uh, to live the lives it is that we want to live, right? You got two choices: repeat the things that work and change the things that don't. And life is too short not to do the things that you love. And the barriers to that are all self-inflicted. It's what we place upon ourselves to say, we have to do this thing. No, you don't have to do anything. You have a choice. We all have that freedom of choice to do whatever it is that we want to do. And it is actually truly limitless. And I'm reminded, actually, this is, in my office, this is the piece of my bike from that accident. And there's even still some blood stains on the tube here, um, to mark that day and as a reminder. Fortunately for me today, I am 100% recovered, and I've been 100% recovered for a long time. I remember being in the hospital right after the accident, probably right when I came out of ICU, and my wife was there. And I said, "Don't worry, I'm going to be stronger than I was before the accident." And it was really clear to me mentally that that was going to be. I don't know why I felt that way. I just knew everything was going to be better. And so I couldn't even roll over, like with fractured pelvis. I couldn't even roll over in my hospital bed. And so I spent time like listening to healing frequencies and studying my x-rays and going online because I couldn't do anything else. Going online and understanding how the pelvis worked and visualizing like my bones fusing together, visualizing what I was going to do after I got out of the hospital. And miraculously, like this recovery went very quickly. And today I ski and mountain bike and backpack and hike and have zero mobility issues whatsoever. And I feel very lucky every day that that's the case. Carpe diem, seize the day. There's so many of these things that we talk about that just kind of become cliche-ish, or sayings that we have heard and we kind of dismiss because, oh, we've heard that before. But if you really think about these things specifically, what are they saying? And what do we have to learn from the things it is that we hear every day? It can be extremely, extremely powerful if we take them to heart and not dismiss them.
What a story, Sean. Seize the day, carpe diem. What a wonderful subject to bring up. Okay, Sean, it's now time to do the all-star moments. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. These are first thought, best thought, rapid fire. We will get to all-star moments in just a second. To grow as a leader, you must make intentional choices about how you want to show up for yourself and your team. Are you ready to grow your leadership? The Gargano Leadership Group offers expert coaching, consulting, and workshops rooted in our 4 leadership pillars: curiosity, alignment, optimism, and self awareness. Leadership starts with forging authentic connections, communicating your values, leading with energy and enthusiasm, and truly understanding yourself. Visit garganoleadership.com to get started with us today. Back to the show. Number one, because you spent so many years, 15 plus years at NBC Universal, your favorite movie of all time.
It's probably The Matrix.
Favorite actor of all time.
Edward Norton.
Favorite director of all time?
Uh, Christopher Nolan.
Your favorite song of all time?
Oh man, I would say maybe Hotel California by the Eagles.
The number one piece of advice you would give a leader who is on the cusp, like maybe they're like you, that people have believed in he or she and they've nurtured them throughout their career, and now they're going to become a CEO. What advice would you give that individual?
Forget everything you think you know. Be open to what that experience is, and really engage with an open mind as to what it could be, not what you think it is.
Thank you, Sean. This has been absolutely tremendous. I've enjoyed the heck out of this visit.
Hey, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm so grateful to have met you, and I'm flattered at this opportunity to speak to you here, and hopefully to get this word out to your audience.
And we thank Sean very much for being on the show. I will give you one takeaway from this conversation that we can all take away to be better employees and, of course, leaders. And it is this: how do you overcome imposter syndrome? You heard Sean. This conversation had a consistent theme, and that is curiosity, constantly asking questions of yourself, the people around you, being a continuous learner. You heard all the work that Sean does. That's the thing, doing the work. So let's take it to his accident, right? The truck accident. While he was riding his bike on the side of the road, he told his wife that I'm going to be even better than I was before the accident, right? That's the perseverance, the growth mindset, thinking ahead, lessening that voice in your head, right? And that is consistent with Sean getting his first job without a college degree at Universal at the age of 19 after his father had passed away. Sean has consistently overcome adversity by doing the work necessary to do so. A wonderful conversation. I really appreciate that. And I think that we should leave it with this: people believed in Sean when he didn't believe in himself, and he's obviously paying that forward. What a wonderful message. We thank Sean very much, and I thank you for being part of the podcast each and every week. We'll see you next week, everybody. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Keep the Line Moving. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Most importantly, share this podcast with your friends, family, and coworkers. It means the world to us. If you have a guest recommendation, visit our website at garganoleadership.com, where you'll also find all our archived episodes. For our marketing coordinator and the producer of this podcast, Savin Narwhal, I'm Chris Gargano. Have a fantastic week, everybody.